Well, good morning to all our fans. This is a beautiful morning, and I, for one, am glad to be alive. Pat McGart, are you glad that you're alive?
Absolutely. Hey, but don't think about it, Julia. It's a beautiful morning, but apparently we're going to get a full-on storm tomorrow, aren't
Oh, that's right. I was lining up. But you see, I thought it was going to come straight on because yesterday was quite blowy here and wet,
we? Oh,
but nothing
yeah.
ever developed.
We
Uh,
we we were coming down from Enniscrone, which is on the coast, in the Sligo-Mayo border.
uh,
Yesterday morning, Julia, it was more than blowy. It was the car was moving about in the wind, so it
uh,
was actually very, very stormy.
yeah. Shimmasini writes about that, you know. He writes about
Yeah.
his car being buffeted by the wind.
I remember.
Very
I
vivid
remember
image.
reading
I
the
don't know
book.
why he
Yeah,
mentioned it, but it is.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everybody knows what that means. That sense of.
yeah.
And you know what? Why did they not do more research in that bridge in Derry, Pat? You know that bridge where at least one vehicle has been blown over the side and the man fell to
Yeah.
his death. Why?
Yeah,
Why?
what happened to it back then. It's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, they discovered he had delivered a lorry load of whatever it was, and his vehicle, the cab at the back, was empty on the way back, and therefore the one like the bridge is very high up, and it's right across the foil, and it's so exposed. And it was. I remember the day very well because believe it or not, we were doing interviews for a job as journalists. And I remember a certain young girl was appointed, and but the next thing after I rang her to say, look, she'd got the job. Somebody else rang me, said, look, a lorry's gone over the bridge, and the two things happened in quick succession. So I've always remembered that. But anyway, the poor man, dropped about 200 feet to his death.
Oh, it's shocking. I always think about it every time I cross that bridge. It's amazing that in this age of high tech and putting people to the moon and talking about Mars and so on, they couldn't have built a bloody bridge where people would feel safe crossing it. I mean,
Yeah,
the world is filled with bridges. They must have the
yeah.
technology at this stage.
Yeah, yeah. And you'd think they would build the side railings higher as well. But there you go, Jude.
That'd be a good start, all right.
Yeah,
Anyway, God be good to the poor man. Jesus, what a way to die. What a way to die.
yeah,
Okay. Right. Speaking of dying, politically, in this case, Sinn Féin's are having a rough time of it this week, you were saying.
yeah. Jude, someone. Before I came on, I thought, wait a minute. What attitude am I going to take? And I really did give some thought. Right
Hmm.
here, I'll start off with the negative, which is
Right.
I think Sinn Féin could have handled it better, and I do think they've been cack-handed in certain ways, etc.,
Like what?
etc. But they also, Jude, I've come to the
Like what,
conclusion.
Pat? Give us an example of that.
Jude, right, the Mickey McMonigal thing.
Hmm.
They should have had structures whereby senior members of staff are told if somebody's suspended, don't give them a reference. Now,
Hmm.
what happened there was a sort of an internal dispute thing. The
Hmm.
Brian Stanley thing, they seem to have, he made a complaint, then they investigated the complaint, then a complaint was received from the person who was making the complaint about Stanley, and between the two, then they seem to have sort of said, right, Stanley has a case to answer. He thinks he doesn't have a case to answer, or something along those lines, and he's taking offence at that, and he says there's a vendetta against him. But here, Jude, what I'm really getting at, Ray Bassett, who's the former Irish ambassador, who was very much involved in the Good Friday Agreement negotiations on behalf of the Irish government, he wrote an article earlier this week, and I agreed with him totally. He says the media are convulsed and attempting. He says the RT and Irish Times, he says, who are both have malign intent towards Sinn Féin. He says are basically attempting to make major out of minor things. He says there's no shortage of stuff if you read the ditch involving government ministers about things like I'll give you a simple example. Jude, Pascal Donoghue was supposed to have given an Israeli government an assurance that the occupied territories bill would not have been passed. And that was revealed in the ditch. At the time, the Irish government were sort of saying what the Israelis were doing was terrible and so on. Uh, uh, Donoghue issued about a three-line sentence. I have no recollection of this ever happening. RT and the Irish Times just dropped it right away. Now,
Hmm.
the Dutch says they got it from stuff that was released by the Israelis. So how come while was the government not speaking out of both sides of its mouth at the one time? That's just a
I
simple example, Jude. But
yeah,
anyway, getting back to the main point, I do believe this. A lot of this is, it's there are minor events being made out to be issues of almost national security. Like, when did Mary Lou know something? Was it the Thursday or a Friday? As if this was a matter of major national importance and security.
well,
Dude, it's a load
what
of
they would
bollocks.
say, Pat, what they would say, and I've heard them say it, is it like, in terms of child protection, nothing is more important than child protection, and that Sinn Féin seem to have covered up something there. What do you think
No,
of?
Jude, that's not at all. Jude, here, look, I've made the point a couple of times. If I am the editor of the Dairy Journal and we
Hmm.
suspended someone and what do you call it? And I said, right, that person, there's an allegation against them. And at that stage, if found guilty of nothing, and I suspend them and or sack him and whatever. And then two friends of his gave him a reference for another job.
Hmm.
Am I or the Dairy Journal back then responsible for two individuals, what they did? Why is that almost like as if it's the collective body is responsible for what two individuals do? I'm saying that's absolute rubbish. Now, the whole Brian Stanley thing, it's Brian Stanley, it's a case, a lot of it is he said, she said. And they're saying, look, know what you do, go and take it to the Guardian, let them decide. Jude,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the Guardian might be saying, look, there's no case here to answer. But
Uh,
there's been a sort of a frenzy, a feeding frenzy about procedure, not about substance.
yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. One of the people that is most reviled in this whole story is not a man that was directly involved, but he is in Sinn Féin and a senior figure, and that's Conor Murphy. Now, Conor
Yeah.
Murphy said, with regard to the British Heart Foundation, and the references were sent in from McMonagall, he said they maybe might look to due diligence when they're hiring people. And that was dismissed as being beside the point and not taking into account the dangers for children and all the rest of it. But I see in the paper somebody said he was dead right. If you were hiring somebody, right, who'd worked for an organization that you knew about, what's the first question you ask them when they come to you for a
Yeah.
job? Why did you leave your old job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody has said that, or very only one person I can see online has said that. That'll be the first question out of my mouth. Why are you leaving Sinn Féin then? Um, did nobody in the British Heart Foundation ask that question? Or am I a
Yeah.
simpleton and I seeing virtue in Conor Murphy's thinking that nobody else can see? What
No,
about
Jude,
you?
you see, Jude, the independent TDs down in the Dáil, I'm seeing it pretty much like we're seeing it. They
Yes,
have said
I saw
they
that.
said that this is an election nearing, that a massive has been made out of very little. Jude, the whole thing about Brian Stanley seems to be that the party has said some allegation was made against Stanley. Stanley denies it. Then the party says, right, we have to investigate. Stanley took some sort of the hump, but something like that. Dude, the whole thing seems to be about procedure, nothing more than that. And by the way, if it's so serious, why Stanley seems that remember he seemed to be suggesting that the Sinn Féin should have done something on his behalf. Going like, wait a minute, the whole thing seems to, until we know the nature of the allegation, all the details. Jude, one other thing as well. A lot of this stuff about Stanley was whether Mary Lou knew it on the 26th of July or the 29th of July. I
Mm.
think, I can't remember. I think it was, I can't remember. Justine McCarthy in the Irish Times has said one thing that seems to be forgotten. Mary Lou McDonald's father died on July 29th, the day Brian Stanley was supposed to have told her the thing. Now, Jude, I think if I learned that my father died, I might be a wee bit sort of through other in regard to the memory of details. Now, in fairness to Mary Lou, she has not once said that was the day my father died.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
hasn't said it public. She just said, what do you call it? I was not given the details, and she stuck to that. By the way, the other thing as well, Jude, and I was talking to a Sinn Féin guy the other several weeks ago, and this is before a lot of this stuff came up. And he says, there's been a bit of drift, he says, because Mary Lou had serious health issues, which she had, by the way. She had
Yeah.
an operation for a hysterectomy, which was sort of kept quiet, which is quite serious, and as female conditions go. And then her husband was diagnosed with cancer this year as well. So a lot of things could have gone on. But Jude, that's never mentioned. And I do think, Jude, let's get this clear. This is the final point. there's an election coming up. Rodrigo Gorman has maybe let the cat out of the bag by saying it's going to be November 29th. I mean, ultimately, this is definitely a feeding frenzy about what I consider. Now, looking after children is very important, but I think the real substance here is bashing Sinn Féin, and the RT and Irish Times are leading the charge.
I think you've got it, Pat. But I think there's more and more people are saying what you're saying in recent days. For example, as you quoted the Matthew McGrath and his fellow members of the Rural Independent Group were unanimous, apparently, in their loud support of Sinn Féin in the Dáil on Tuesday night. They said that the party was being Sinn Féin was being kicked around, but they supported them. That this was an effort, they said, this rural group said it's an effort to deflect from more serious matters, and it's politically motivated witch hunt by the government on the eve of a general election. It's the old story.
Mm.
Elections coming.
Mm.
Let's find some big scandal. Remember the time Jerry Adams was arrested when there
Yeah,
was an
three
election
days
coming?
before an election.
Aye.
Yeah,
And they
and
said,
then
oh,
nothing.
that's very important, very important. You have to arrest him, have to find out all these things. And,
Mm.
they tried as best they could to make that a big thing. Actually, that rebounded in Sinn Féin's favour because they felt
Yeah.
that Adams was being victimised, as he was.
Jerry Adams, I think at the time, said he was held for 3 days, and he said
Mm.
didn't even really question him. And he
Ah,
said he had no doubt whatsoever it was politically motivated. They had
yeah.
20 years to elect him or arrest him and didn't. But they arrested him before an important general election.
I have a funny feeling. Now, I know that the government, the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, are falling over themselves to get the election going because
Yeah.
this stuff is fresh in people's minds and they think that'll really damage Sinn Féin because on the one hand, their enemy, or their opponent, Sinn Féin, are in what they believe a weakened state. And secondly, on their behalf, they have loads of money and they've given the public loads of money. And they think the two factors will really send them sailing in and diminish Sinn Féin maybe permanently. I don't agree. I see it. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say there might be a lot of people, certainly be like me anyway, who would say, this is a load of tosh. These guys are on a witch hunt. They really want to kick Sinn Féin to death and they're ignoring the things that really matter. Is all this talk about the right procedures, is this going to get me a house so I can go home in the evening and feel I'm making some progress in life? Is this going to better my health services? All sorts of real stuff, I think. I really think
Yeah.
that it is the media, and maybe people like us, Pat, who make a
Yeah.
brouhaha about that. And ordinary people don't bother their arse thinking about that sort of stuff, or we're spending
No,
much time
Jude,
thinking about it.
here the reality. Jude, if there's a smoking gun produced that Sinn Féin have definitely done something that's substantive and as evil, right? Fair enough. But Jude, so
What
far,
would that
and
be?
it
What
is
would
so
that look
far.
like, Pat? Pat, what does
I don't know.
that look
Maybe
like?
I'm not even sure, Jude, what that would be. But right now, as I'm repeating now, I'm even boring myself saying all so far they've been talking about is smoke and mirrors, about procedure and about all the rest. The only one I think they might have an issue about is Mary Lou giving an effusive farewell to Niall O'Dongala when he resigned as chair of the Senate or whatever,
Yeah.
Cahirla as the Senate. Now, at the time, he was alleged to have sent, or he admitted, I think, sending a inappropriate text or
Yeah. Okay,
social media
here's a
message to a
question for you, Pat.
17-year-old.
Then here's a
Yeah,
question for you. You say that she sent, and she did. I wrote a sort of not a glowing reference, but a tribute to the sterling work
yeah, yeah.
in the Senate. Now, is it not possible that Niall O'Donnell actually did do sterling work in the Senate and that he acted inappropriately in sending these messages to kids?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
acted as a kid, 17. If he'd been 18, it wouldn't
yeah,
have.
yeah. And Jude,
The
but
two
right,
things
Jude,
could
that's
exist side by side, and I can't bear this.
yeah, Jude, and that was the point I was getting to. That is about the only one that I think they could have a bit of difficulty. And Jude, I'd see at the end of the day, that wouldn't change my mind in the least. The guy was actually suspended, by the party, etc., and has left the party. Now, everywhere you go, Sinn Féin has suspended and sacked the people involved, but because of certain procedural issues, all the rest of it. So, Jude, I think right. But getting back now to your substantive point, Jude, see tomorrow morning, the homelessness in the Republic is still a major, major issue. Getting a house as a major issue. There are people now, they're 29s and 30s living with mommy and daddy because they can't afford a house. There are the waiting lists in hospital are still massively whatever. The asylum issue, there are people. Jude, if you go to Letterkenny, we were down in Enniscrone in County Sligo, and it's a wee small village, Jude, and the number of people, of foreigners, are there. So that whole immigration and how we dealt with it is still a major issue. Jude, there are any number, and let me repeat as well, there's this sort of thing that everything's hunky dory. You should never judge a country by how well the economy is doing. There's such a thing as a society out there, and there's a lot of people struggling.
That's true, and the most vulnerable seem to be the ones who are suffering most. And with
Mm.
little kids, I wonder, in terms of the way that Fine Gael particularly dashed out all that money to people, benefits and credits and this, that, and the other. Did they target the most vulnerable or the weakest in society? I don't know. Do you know?
No, I do not. It's money for everybody. It's I think as
Everybody,
far as I know,
no
yeah,
discrimination. Oh,
everybody.
fair
So
enough. So
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
gets prizes for all.
Double child payment or whatever it is. Yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
see, I'm
Well, we
biased.
don't have any children, so that rules me out. But anyway,
I would still say more or less what you're saying too, Pat. While certain aspects of the way these things were handled weren't the greatest, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It does seem to me dancing on the head of a pin. What's far more important now, how has the state been run? The state is awash with money, and yet you've got homelessness and people who can't buy a house. I mean, that
uh,
alone should be enough to damn any government. And if people, I have more trust in people. I think most people won't be conned by the notion, oh, Sinn Féin, terrible lot. Or look at the way they're doing, and they fired the guy, and then they didn't tell. And she said, I mean, if somebody worked for me, Pat, and they were leaving,
uh,
I'd do all I could. It's sort of a good manners thing more than anything else.
yeah,
I'd like to thank you for your years of service, and you really worked very hard. We would say people say that about people who are very ordinary and haven't done very much. It's just a kind of
yeah.
a courteous way of saying goodbye.
By the way, Jude, just there, one of the things came into my head. By the way, they're trying as well one more time to bring in who is running Sinn Féin. Is it the
Oh,
faceless people?
Jesus me.
Jude, I
Listen,
laugh. They've thrown in everything but the kitchen sink is coming here. And by the way, what's the evidence that people in the north are running Sinn Féin? Look, it's always this innuendo. But the late great Tommy Garman came out with a great line, and Tommy was no Sinn Féin supporter, but Tommy, I always give him great credit. He was very fair. Tommy says, he says, they keep coming out with this. He says, he says this the so-called faceless men. He says they're at Stormont every day. He says I know their names. They're advisors to the party. He says if I went to the Dáil, I'd see the same people in Fianna Fáil, the same people in Fine Gael. He says why do they keep referring to these people as faceless men? He says they are members of the party the same way as Fianna Fáil are members of the party. And some of them are very influential. Sure, there's a guy in Fine Gael a couple of years back, the general, not Tom Curran, there's a guy, a strategist who
yes, I
apparently had
remember him.
more,
I remember
Flanagan, I
him.
think was his name,
Something like that.
who had
Yeah.
more influence, they say, on political direction than any member of the party.
And they say Phil Hogan is still the most powerful Irish politician in Europe.
Yeah,
Because he's all sorts of connections. He lost his job, but he's all sorts of connections, and he can pave the way for people to who are selected and who gets a job if they're elected.
yeah, because he
In
knows the right
Europe.
people.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot more I could say about this, but I just it really gets in my nerves, and I think we'd both agree that it's a matter of A, focusing on things that aren't central to the public welfare, and
yeah.
B, trying to kick the shit out of Sinn Féin now that they appear to have a chance. Would that be a fair summation?
That's I. Ray Bassett wrote, and I'm giving Ray because Ray's a middle of the road guy, and he's a former
Yeah,
senior
very
civil
much.
servant. It's just huge issues are being made over the timing of minor events as if they were of major importance to the security of the nation.
Yeah,
You know, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
or words to that effect.
Well, it's good to hear some people speaking out. And incidentally, Kevin Maher, Kevin Maher, the guy who used to work for
Yeah, yeah,
Tony
very
Blair.
good guy,
He
a
was
former
on
Labour guy.
he was on the View last during the week. Did you see him by any chance?
No, no, I was in Enniscrone and the other, and getting foreign TV stations in that part of west of Ireland is very difficult.
Well, he was saying that that they really hadn't. that to say that Sinn Féin had bungled in all the ways they dealt with all these things wasn't true. He said in one case, I forget which one it was, I'm not sure which one, but he said actually it was a textbook example of exactly how you should organize something, where you
Yeah.
look, you find out whether the person's what the position is, what they've done, and then you dismiss them from the party or make a decision about
Yeah.
them, and you report them to authority. His point was that the media have persuaded us that the Sinn Féin have done it wrong all the way, and he said on
Yeah.
the contrary. At least one case.
And so many people want to believe that. But anyway, we said we're keeping it
Aye,
short.
aye,
Right?
aye, aye,
Well,
aye.
right. What do you make of the Israeli killing of
Okay.
your man Sinwar and the reaction to it?
I think it is sort of disgusting. That's the truth. There were people from Keir Starmer to Joe Biden to Netanyahu who delighted. They said, "Oh, it's really great news. We've killed Sinwar." Now, I suppose maybe if you got to a certain stage, you'd feel that way about it. But it seemed to be kind of sickening to talk that way about a person who lost their lives through violence. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there does seem to be conflicting reports. One was that they just came on him. There was three guys in the Israeli IDF fired on them, and eventually they went in and they found out that one of them was Sinwar. But there's also a video by a drone that goes through a lot of little corridors and into the ruins of a building, and apparently seated on an armchair, they claim is Sinwar. And he has lost his hand. Appears to be, the whole thing's very faded, but it looks as if he's lost his hand. And as the drone comes past, he reaches down, he gets a stick, and he throws it in the direction of the drone. Now, it's quite a striking piece of footage, but
Yeah.
I just wonder, I really just wonder if they claim it was Sinwar did that. On the other hand, they claim that they killed these guys and it was only then that they discovered who he was. Am I missing something, or what would
Ah,
that?
but it looks like they're willing to kill anybody anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you know about the real the Israeli foreign minister is called Israel Katz, and I think he is one of the most despicable human beings on the planet. He attacked Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN,
Yeah,
for not welcoming the killing of Sinwar. I thought it was, and this Katz has also banned Guterres from visiting Israel because he says he's not welcome. That the UN is an anti-Israel,
yeah,
anti-Jewish organization.
yeah, yeah,
Jude, you know something? I am so pissed off, sick and tired of this sort of Israeli, you know, arrogance. They think that if you're opposed to their brutality, barbarism, absolute genocide, that wait a minute, you must be anti-Semitic. Well, look, Jude, if opposing what Israel is doing in Gaza makes me anti-Semitic, I'm going to run that flag up and fly it proudly
mm,
because I am totally opposed to what Israel is doing, and I think any normal, decent human being would be too.
exactly, exactly. I watched Question Time on that, and the vast majority of the audience, in fact, anybody, there was a woman who was a Palestinian British person, and she spoke
Uh,
so passionately. She wasn't that eloquent, but it was quite moving the extent to which her whole body even was kind of
yeah.
concentrated
But
on.
Jude, here you just said something there. Let me run that. Did you? I can't remember what he called the Tory guy was on. He said, "We will not mourn the killing of or the passing of Sinwar." And by the way, Jude, it was BBC as a disgraceful organisation, and I'm really repeating myself here again. Jude, every night in Question Time, the panel is made up of the sort of what would you say, the establishment parties who all sing from the same hymn sheet as Blair, as Starmer, as the Tories, etc.
I
It's a
find out,
colonized version.
I
They
don't know if that's
they
totally
blame
true. Don't know if
what?
that's totally true. I don't know if that's totally true. There was a young brown woman, well, not young, I suppose she's in her 30s, maybe her 40s.
But Jude, she
But
was not from the mainstream political party. She was the
that's
only
right.
person on
Oh,
every
yeah,
night. Jude, there's about five people on the panel, and
yeah.
four of them are always pro-Israel. every time.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, you know. I mean, I forgot what the guy's name is. It begins with a D, but he was the former deputy leader of the
Yeah.
Tory. And
Mm.
oh, yeah, he said that Israel were right and, they
Yeah.
had to defend themselves and so on. I know what I thought. You know what I was thinking, Pat? I was saying sort of a sacrilegious thought. Because I find it difficult to believe in hell, despite what I said to you on many occasions. Uh, I do find it hard to believe because the fact is, even you live a very evil life for about 80 years, say, and then you died, that your
Mm.
maker would then put you in the most excruciating torment, not for
Mm.
80 years, but forever.
Yeah.
That seems out of proportion, no matter how bad the person was. And then I think that's matches my whole thinking about Israel. Not that those, if your people were butchered, um, if Hamas came over and killed people and were told they raped people and so on, no matter what the history, even you knew the history was against you, it'd be natural to feel terrible resentment. But to the
Yeah.
extent that you would go out and butcher and kill children by the thousands and
Yeah.
women by the thousands and reduce a place to rubble and to insist that you're a right to do so. Holy
Yeah,
God.
and the guy, the Tory guy, Jude, neither of us can remember his name now. He was sacked member of
Ah,
was it was looking at porn or something, and he was there allegations or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't remember exactly why. But anyway, he was on, and he said, "Look, let's get this clear." He says, "I know the room is not with me on this, but the room is, by the way, that's the only decent thing, Jude. I think the from the ground up, there's a lot of people in Britain now sort of saying, but it doesn't matter. The Tory party, the Labour Party, Social Democrats are all on Israel's side, and anyway." He said there's no country would put up with what Israel is putting up with, and they're totally entitled to defend themselves, and I support them. And the Hamas are terrorists and all the usual stuff. But what he didn't say, and what he never comes at it, because I think this is the British view as the view of the colonizer. The
mm.
colonized, which are the Palestinians, should not have to be put up with people stealing their land, should not have to be put up with mass killing on a regular basis by they should not have to be put up with living in the biggest open air prison in the world. They should not have to put up with Israelis raiding their homes in the middle of the night. They should not have to put up with administrative detention, where there's about 9,000 Palestinians in jail without ever a release date, on no charges, no nothing type thing, and that they live in an area where the unemployment rate is about 80%, and where the food levels and all the rest of it are basically a little above sustaining them. That's what the Palestinians are putting up. But it's the whole debate is never framed in terms of the Palestinians.
I saw a commentator, or else I read it somewhere. I think I saw a commentator on TV, and he made a point, and I think it's a very interesting one, that the notion of the West, this notion that the West has one view on things and the East, like Russia and so on, has another view on things.
Yeah.
He's saying that that's falling apart. That in
Yeah.
the West, there's many people in the West who are really opposed to the things that the West is doing. And the
Yeah.
example he gave
I'm
was
one of them.
America. Example they
Yeah.
gave was America. And they said that in America,
Mm.
any number of people who are supportive of the Palestinians and think that the president is doing a terrible thing, that he hasn't just simply cut it off, that is cut off supplies to Israel, that it's sort of disgusting and hypocritical as well. And there's people like ourselves who are looking at what's going on and, seeing Keir Starmer, Macron in France, the German Chancellor, that all of these, nobody, there isn't the same, what would you call it, cohesive alliance in the West that there
Mm.
once was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that
No.
could have actually fundamental changes in the way that the world
Yeah.
is
Dude,
balanced.
I would say 20, 30 years ago, everybody in Ireland would have supported what the Americans were doing. We
Yeah,
were sort of
yeah.
pro-America, and now I just find, Jude, I find it actually borderline disgusting being asked to support that. In fact, I get very annoyed about it, Jude, because how do you stand back? We're seeing genocide on air. We're seeing every night we're seeing kids being pulled from rubble. We see ambulances being attacked. We see schools being attacked. We see refugee centres being attacked. We have seen more. Remember the Al Shifa hospital where the Israelis said they attacked it because it was a mass headquarters. And then they put on a few guns and all. Dude, it's now accepted by just about everybody that was not, but they justified it at the time because it was a red line they had crossed. Dude, they have attacked so many hospitals since, and it's now become sort of de rigueur. Who cares? It's just part of the war.
That's the thing. I think, are they depending on the fact that, like us, we get this age where we say, oh, for God's sake, I can't even think about it anymore. Let it go, let it go.
Uh, uh,
Don't feel that outrage. Yeah, compassion fatigue setting in.
yeah,
I don't think many people will forget this. I don't think,
no, dude,
and all, I don't think in my lifetime, it might be very long, but anyway, I don't
who
think I'll
knows?
ever feel feelings of sympathy for Israel again. I could have felt sympathy for them, given that they're a different small unit in the Middle East. Not
Yeah.
anymore. Not
Dude, the
anymore.
compassion that he got after the Holocaust and all the rest of it, I think they've just used up that compassion. Whatever word you want to use, adjective you want to use, because I think at this stage, dude, I have no sympathy for Israel anymore. None.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely
think I
none.
think your views are widespread among people. Anyway, there we are, Pat. Have we
On
nothing
that note,
share our viewers with? Is there no?
no,
What, are you going to do anything in the sun? Are you going to sit out in the sun? Are you going to
I'm going to
walk?
go out. I'm going to go out for a walk.
Aye, very good.
Jude, I'll leave our listeners with this one, our viewers. It seems to be I
Both
don't
of
have to
them.
cut the grass anymore because I think the frost is there's been no night of frost. I don't see me grass growing, and for which I am eternally grateful.
Pat, you don't have to cut grass anymore. You don't.
I let it go wild.
It's
I
better
let
for,
it go
yes, it's
wild.
better for nature. It's better for nature. They say that. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I think we've been people are cutting their grass. In other words, they're saying, I don't care if the planet falls apart. Don't want to be shamed by my neighbors. That's the truth. That's the way it
No, but
is.
there's a certain other element truth, Jude. If you go out
Okay.
and look at the grass and it's growing wild, it doesn't look right.
We've
There's not.
we've been conditioned too much, I think.
Maybe anyway. On that note,
Okay.
Doctor
Okay,
Collins,
Pat. Good talking to you
all
as
the best.
always.
Good luck, Jude.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.